with the audience on the right, they can hear you.
Perfect.
All right. Hey everyone, we're here for our next session. It is on leveraging user insights across the stack. And we will have Nydia from a partner at Celo giving the presentation. And I'll let her take it from here. Can you guys confirm in the chat that you can hear her?
Hi everyone, Nitya here. Really excited to be chatting with everyone. Can everyone hear me? Awesome. So yeah, again, thanks so much for joining today. I'm going to be speaking, as Shinji said, about leveraging user insights across the stack. It's going to be more of a product-focused talk about building products within a decentralized paradigm. And so if we could leave questions till the end, please feel free to ask them as you come up with them, and then we'll have some time afterwards to address any. So with that, I'm going to just present. Going full screen. Perfect. So yeah, as Shinji mentioned, I'm a member of the Celo team, and I work on the Celo protocol. And so here's some information if you want to reach out afterwards. And so just a bit more about what I do specifically. I lead the product for consumer and developer initiatives within the Celo team. And so I was previously a product engineering lead in fintech, and I've always been really passionate about financial inclusion and about creating, enabling broader financial access through technology. And so I came to the blockchain space initially because I was really interested in the technology. And then later on, I got really hooked by the ability of blockchains to really give power back to users. And so that's what brought me here. So a bit about Celo. So Celo's mission is to build a monetary system that creates the conditions for prosperity for everyone. And so a little bit about what that means, and you'll see why this is relevant kind of throughout the talk. But really what we're trying to do is take the possibility opened up with blockchain technology, with so many of the tools that exist, and bring that potential to anyone with a mobile phone. And so really trying to open up access to a financial system, and as a result, really move the needle when it comes to inclusion and access. And one thing you'll notice as well is that this mission has really informed how we've chosen to build and how product has been approached by the Celo platform. And so today we're going to talk a bit about what it means to build a product in a blockchain paradigm versus perhaps a more centralized paradigm that many folks might be more familiar with. And so that really starts with the tech stack. And so in a centralized paradigm, right, you have your database, you have some servers, you have some clients. And typically when you're building a product, you'll build all of these. The blockchain stack can look a little bit different, right? We have, there are layer 1 protocols, maybe they're proof of stake based, maybe they're proof of work. Many of them have smart contract ability. And then there's also like pure application layers on top of that. And so what we see within blockchain products is that many of them will address one or more of these layers. There are a number of projects that are focusing on building exclusively layer 1 solutions. There are products that are focused on building only at the contract layer. And then there are projects that are building only applications, leveraging layers below. And then, of course, there are projects that do that have attributes of both. So some projects will build smart contracts and then the applications on top of them. Some projects will build a protocol as well as, or a blockchain network as well as some smart contracts on top of it. And so what's really interesting about this stack is that you don't have to do everything. And this is really unique in that up until this point, whenever someone has wanted to build a product, they've needed to necessarily own this whole stack. So not having the need to do this is great in many ways, right? You can just focus on one layer. You can, let's say you want to just build an application, you already have a backend. There is a flip side, which is that if you're building at one layer, you have to choose what smart contracts you want to use or what blockchain network you want to build your product on. And so in general, one way that one might go about making this decision is thinking, okay, who is your product for? So starting with the purpose. So if you're building for end users, for example, or if you're building a wallet or a UI, you're building for end users. If you're building a protocol or smart contracts, your users might be developers who are then building products for end users. And so this affects your approach in a few ways. So when you're building for end users, it's helpful to have control over the user experience. And that's because typically an end user application has a specific problem that it's trying to solve. And in solving that problem, ideally you're iterating with end users, you're learning a lot along the way. And as you learn more about the problem you're solving, it's helpful to be able to have the flexibility to make changes so that you can perfect that user experience and have it be exactly what your users tell you they want. And then on the flip side, if you're building for developers, so you're looking to create a platform in this case. And so typically what's helpful there is having an idea of what that platform's for. This is helpful because it enables you to build good abstractions, enables you to build a strong developer experience that is opinionated in the right ways. But ultimately you do, in this case, want to enable modularity. It's really difficult to know the whole range of applications that developers are going to build on your platform. Like using any layer 1 protocol, we have an example. I think it would be really hard for anyone involved with these projects to go back to the very beginning of the project and predict all of the different use cases that have come up as a result. And I think DeFi on Ethereum is an incredible example of that. And so no matter what, you really want to be able to iterate, as I mentioned earlier. Like there's great platforms and great products have this ability to continually hone the problem it is they're solving and the group they're solving it for. And as they learn, being able to make changes that ultimately impact the quality of the experience. And so if we think about how end user applications do it, it's through new features, through redesigns, through kind of these new products and new changes. We see that happen at the smart contract level with contract upgrades, and at the layer 1 protocol level through either upgradable governance or through hard forks. And so it's just some approaches to this. In iterating, it's helpful to choose a platform carefully. There are some platforms that where it may be hard to make certain changes over others. And thinking through what kind of flexibility is afforded by different platforms is really helpful. Giving yourself the flexibility to iterate, again, in turn, like thinking through what kind of walls you may hit and anticipating that, and thinking about what types of flexibility are the most important to you in building your product. And then, of course, you want to validate any findings and any updates with your target audiences. And then overarching to all of this is thinking full stack. So how can you pinpoint the crux of something that could be better about your experience, and think about what layer or layers at which you might need to make a change to make that happen. And so kind of building on this, the next question might be like, how do we actually do this iteration? And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how this works in practice and share just a few examples of iteration within the Celo platform, like the research that's informed it, how the Celo protocol has approached integrating user research into development, and a couple of concrete case studies. So just to provide a little bit of context on some of the case studies I'm going to share, because they will go a little bit in depth, I'm just going to share a quick overview of the Celo technical approach for anyone who may be unfamiliar. So Celo takes a full stack approach in building. At the layer one, it's a proof of stake network that was originally a fork of Ethereum with Celo Gold as the native asset. So for those familiar with Ethereum, Celo Gold would be the analog to ETH. One layer up at the smart contract level, Celo has an integrated stable asset, the Celo dollar, and a lightweight identity protocol. You might think of these as interesting if you remember back to the mission I shared earlier around enabling broader financial access. So thinking about access as identity and access to sound currency. These are really two primitives that make that possible. And then at the application layer, a mobile wallet and an SDK, allowing both end users as well as interested developers to create novel financial applications using these features. So from the very beginning, Celo's been motivated by leveraging user research and having it be highly integrated into the process. So you might remember that Celo's mission is to create financial access for everyone. And so one thing that's really clear is that we need to build with users, and that we need to go to users and understand what assumptions we may have that really don't hold up in a more like in a non-blockchain environment, for example, and check our assumptions. And so after the earliest prototype of the Celo wallet was built, so this was almost a year and a half ago, one of the first things the team decided to do was to run a small pilot in Argentina with a group of university students. And so the goal behind this was to test out, one, what would the challenges be in onboarding with the Celo application? How would people use it? So the Celo application, the Celo mobile wallet allowed at that point people to store Celo dollars and Celo gold, exchange between them, and send Celo dollars to their friends. And so we were very curious about what uses people would find for this, as well as what problems they would run into that we could then learn from in future iterations of the product. And so even before the first user had downloaded the wallet, as the team was creating a plan for what the process would look like of getting these assets on people's phones and getting onboarding, one thing we realized was that since Celo Gold was the native asset and we wanted people to transact in Celo dollars because it was a stable asset, we realized very quickly that we were going to have to give people both Celo dollars as well as Celo Gold as part of this pilot in order to cover the transaction fees or gas that would typically be necessary to do a transaction. We realized pretty quickly that while this was maybe workable for a small test with a small focus group, it would potentially be a large blocker to adoption. And that's something that we realized, where if someone wants to buy a sandwich, needing to hold two different assets to purchase that sandwich was going to pose blockers for many people. And getting multiple assets into the hands of people in order to spend it was going to be a blocker to mass adoption. And so this ended up being quite fundamental, right? It's all the way at how transactions are paid at the blockchain and network level. And so what the team did was made transaction fees payable in both the Celo dollar stable asset as well as Celo Gold, the native asset, the protocol. And as a result, now there's a feature within the Celo platform that allows transactions to occur and for gas to be paid in either asset. And so this is one example where testing out an end user experience and thinking through an end user experience informed design at the very lowest level of the protocol and of design of the system. So similarly, another example, in our earliest pilots, we noticed that as time went on, so within the Celo wallet, there's a light client syncs with the blockchain. So this means that you don't need to trust a third-party node in order to submit transactions. So this is great from a decentralization perspective. But one thing we noticed was that this client sync would take a really long time as there were more and more blocks in the network and more stake to sync. And so this was certainly slow, which was not great from a user perspective. Additionally, we realized that this was costly. And one notable example is in the Philippines, we sent some folks from the team to do another focus group there, and we noticed that people were quite data sensitive in this group we were speaking with. In fact, most people kept data off by default and would only turn data on their mobile device when they wanted to do a specific activity. And this, among other factors, had to do with the fact that plans tend to be prepaid versus postpaid, like they were for many of the folks within the who were building the mobile application. And so we realized very quickly that in addition to being fast, this client sync also needed to be cost effective. And as a result, the team has worked really hard on making the client sync so that headers only need to be synced once per epoch. And in addition, there's some ongoing work in order to make the sync as light as a few kilobytes per week. And so this is using a ZK Snark-based approach. And so again, this really informed in an area of work that we knew was important, but it really kind of increased the priority of this feature. It was very much increased by actually being able to go and speak with users and to understand how critical this would be to broader adoption. And so this has informed an ongoing work stream on making the Celo-like client both fast as well as cost effective. And so just to close, wanted to share some opportunities in emerging markets that the team is seeing. Like a broad principle behind user research at Celo is that it's not purely for development of a Celo wallet or even the Celo protocol. Like the goal behind these is to open source as much of these learnings as possible and to ultimately enable broad access to the blockers to adoption that exist, the opportunities that exist, and overall to make it really easy to gain access to insights. And so some opportunities that I've in particular found really interesting, as well as many folks who've participated in these focus groups have found interesting. I'll go through them here. One is crypto asset liquidity. So in places where either exchange access is difficult or where access to crypto assets is difficult, ways of providing liquidity. So either places to spend crypto, places to buy crypto, having more ability to do that in more places around the world. And there are some great ways that's been facilitated to date through like peer-to-peer exchanges and other means. And like agent models as well are another interesting kind of emerging trend in this. And then a second is inclusive credit and lending. So thinking about how to create identity systems that make it possible to, that make it much easier than it is today for someone to receive credit or for someone to receive a loan and build up credit. So access to credit being one of the large blockers to being able to build up wealth and the ability to get access to collateral. And so thinking about ways that that we can make that easier and make that more open. And then third, digital wallets and forms of digital payment. So this is something that we've seen in some markets, like M-Pesa in Kenya being a great example, especially when it comes to cross-border payments. There's just such a huge opportunity for blockchain-based payments to really change how this is done today, and to ultimately, again, give more power back to the end users and participants in these sending exchanging activities. And the fourth is earning crypto assets. And so there's a really beautiful ability in how blockchains generate assets and how assets are created into existence to allow for a broader range of individuals to actually earn assets. So rather than having capital created by taking on debt or getting capital by debt, an ability to actually earn it by doing meaningful work. And so there is so much potential here to allow folks who may not have access to credit or may not have access to someone who will not allow them to take on debt to actually earn and participate in these networks. And so if any of this was interesting or you just want to learn more, there are some links here. So would love to see people here connect with the Celo developer community. There's a website, a newsletter, as well as an active conversation on Discord. And so would really love to see more folks here get involved, and would love to hear from people. And that's it. So thanks so much for listening, and happy to take any questions now. Cool. So just checking in, I see a couple of questions here, and so I'll go in the order of votes. So the first one I see is, isn't the bottleneck to adoption of any stablecoin, including Celo, the fact that governments do not accept them as legal tender? Yeah, great question. So I think there are a few blockers. So one is, I would say one is certainly usability. So many stablecoins, there isn't, aside from the, I guess, arbitrage use case, there aren't as many ways to use stablecoins the way that we'd use fiat. And so I very much agree that like there is this blocker of not having acceptance as legal tender. I think there's very much an opportunity presented by some of the really cool projects that are allowing for off-ramps from crypto into other into other means of payment. So there are projects that allow you to spend Bitcoin with a debit card, for example. There are projects that are allowing you to like use your crypto to purchase goods and services on Amazon. And so I think like one potential that I see is the use of stablecoins to pay for regular goods and services, especially online. And so while it may still, we're all hoping for the day where you can spend a stablecoin as easily as you can spend a dollar bill or a euro note, I think there are still ways that we can spend crypto online, and those are really exciting. Cool. I think the next question, I see one with 3 votes. So when can we start deploying and start using the mainnet fully? Yeah, great question. So there is a timeline on the Celo.org page. So I believe it's Celo.org/timeline. And so on the homepage, there is a list of different milestones, and at each point, what functionality is enabled by that milestone. So most recently, the mainnet network, our release candidate 1, was stood up by a set of validators from the Great Celo Stakeoff. And so that is currently confirming blocks. That's very much the first step. There are a series of other steps that will be followed as far as governance proposals that will be voted on by the community, like rewards, steps like that. And so for the full timeline, I'd recommend checking out the website. Next question. Cool. Okay, so overseas transactions have long been an unfulfilled promise of crypto. What about Celo and the current market makes you think that will change? Yeah, absolutely great question. So I guess as far as I see it, there are 2 blockers. One is the transaction cost of sending via many of the current crypto-based remittance processors. They're quite high. And a lot of that has to do with scalability efforts that many people are working on, for sure, as well as kind of attributes of how some of these protocols were designed. So what Celo has been optimized for from the start is allowing for transactions that feel like a cash transaction. So they're fast, fast finality, fast block times, and as low transaction costs as possible. And so I would hope that those kind of advances and those areas of focus would pay off in terms of greater usability for a cross-border transfer case. Additionally, to go back to the previous point around just like liquidity in different places, I think there's still very much a lot of white space for anyone looking to start a company or to start building a project around allowing for liquidity in and out of crypto more globally. And so those are, I guess, the two main blockers. And then, let's see. Okay, so any suggestions for overcoming adoption issues in emerging markets? Ooh, great question. Yeah, I think first, just making as much as possible, having a close connection with users. We've learned so much from every trip that we've taken to like to a market where we think there might be potential for Celo to provide broader inclusion or to enable broader adoption of digital assets. And so I would say like user research is really a huge one. And then second, integrating aspects of the emerging market environment into building and development processes as much as possible. So one thing that the team who works on the wallet does is we actually have a bunch of phones, like we went out and tried to find the kind of most budget phones that we could within each of our kind of areas. And we use those on the regular. So initially what we found is a lot of folks were testing on their own phones, which tend to be like more like higher end devices or more fancy devices. And so as far as possible, being able to get kind of more budget devices and test on a broader range is really helpful. Additionally, being able to simulate low connectivity conditions. And so again, if you're not able to go in market, being able to create an environment kind of in your home or in your working area where there is low connectivity or where connectivity will occasionally go out, just allows you to build for these sorts of circumstances in a first-class way.
Nitya, this was great. Do you think you can share some educational resources that would help these people learn more about Celo or is tied to your talk, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. What's the best way to share them?
Drop in the chat.
Oh, perfect. Okay, I'll just share the medium. Oops. Close this. So Celo has a Medium blog where all of these user insights and kind of research trip takeaways are shared. And so let me see if there's a specific tag, but that page has everything. And so if you take a look, oh yes, there's this one. And so I would just recommend taking a look at the blog. There's a lot of great resources there. And then similarly, happy to share again some of the links to Discord as well as like the Celo developer site. And so those are also great ways to like just ask follow-up questions if there is if there's anything specific.
Awesome. Thanks, Nydia. We're going to transition to the next session now.
Of course. Thanks so much to everyone, for everyone who attended.
All right.